Hey there. So I've been meaning to do more brush videos, and I figured I'd start out with just going over my brush collection, my current thoughts on my brushes, and maybe some, mini reviews as I go through them. I realized that I actually have a lot more brushes in my collection than I realized, so I'm going to split this up into face brushes and eye brushes. And this video, I'm going to start with the face brushes. So if that sounds good, then please continue watching and let me bring out all my brushes. All right, so these are almost all of my face brushes. There's two that I have that aren't out here because I can't find them. They're two brushes that I don't use anymore. They're both synthetic. One's from Makeup Forever. The other one is from Florisis, and I'll bring them out at some point. They're both fine, but I have much better brushes out here to discuss anyway. So let's start with my flat top brushes. And by the way, most of these are Fude, and the brushes that aren't Fude, I'm probably going to get rid of because they just don't quite measure up. Maybe with like one exception. But when I started using makeup, I really wanted something to work with my Bareminerals foundation. I used their original mineral foundation, and so I tried out, Bareminerals brushes. And the brushes that they make now are a bit different from what they used to make. These are all synthetic, and I don't recommend them. So I have this brush. I also had I think it's the newer flat top brush that has like a little circle hollowed out in it, and the tip and the bristles are white, and it's like a chunkier, smaller handle that I think you can just like stand up. I had that one too. I gave it to a friend. But neither one of these are very good. The other one's a little bit better than this one. This one just like really tugs at your skin. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm not putting that much pressure on. It just kind of like sticks to your skin in a way, and it can make the application kind of clumpy. And I don't know if that's going to be true for everyone or if it's just me. I do have issues with powder foundation going on clumpy, I think because I have really oily skin. But overall, this is just, I don't know how people apply anything with this brush and it not like, one, be uncomfortable because it's like really moving around your skin, and two, like put down a good foundation, because I feel like this just clumps everything up and you see streaks, and it's just not a good time. I tried this and I knew that I liked this shape. The Makeup Forever brush that I had for a really long time, I always knew that I didn't like the shape. It wasn't a flat top. It's one of those that's like a rounded shape, like kind of a kabuki brush, but a rounded top rather than a flat top. And I always knew I didn't like that. I always knew that I wanted a flat top, but this brush did not work out. So I decided, well, I'll pick up one of Bareminerals' older brushes. So this came out, I don't even know how many years ago, but this was back when they were making natural hair brushes. And this is natural hair. I believe it's goat hair, but I don't really know. And this was so much better. It still is a little bit more rough on my skin than I would like, but its main issue, and I don't know if I just, oh, there it is that I've been using this. I got this like 2-3 years ago, at least. And I've used this so much. This has gone through so many washes, and it's still shedding. It's still shedding. So while I like the finish that this brush gives, for the most part, it's just like I almost always get hairs in my foundation because of this, and I don't like that. It is actually surprisingly nice in terms of the finish that it gives when it puts on Bareminerals foundation, and it is so much better than their new synthetic stuff. But I mean, it's after so many years of using this, it still sheds. And then I have, so this came in a set, and I probably have other brushes in that set. I don't know where the other brushes are. But I kind of like this brush. It's basically the smaller version of that. It's kind of cool. I don't really ever use this for anything, but I feel like if you have like a really small face, or for some reason you want some precision with putting on either foundation, or if you do use like a powder concealer, this could be nice for that. Also, I think if you have maybe Bareminerals, their old loose blushes and things, this might be nice for that. But I've never really used this for anything. I just like the concept of the brush. I think it's kind of cool, but I don't really use it. I just kind of keep it around. But frankly, it's kind of cluttering my space. So after I purchased these, and I wasn't like super happy with any of them, I had been researching and I started looking into Fude. And I think one of the first brushes that I came across that people were just very, very happy with was Sonia G's original Face One brush. And that's what this is. And this is a whole different level of brush than I was used to using. I did buy the secondhand. I think by the time that I found out what Fude was, this wasn't available for purchase anymore. And I don't think that the Buffer Pro, I don't think that the Buffer Pro had been released yet, which is, I believe, is the same brush, but it has a different handle to it. But this is very different, which is funny because it looks so similar to these other brushes, you know, like it's this flat top kind of brush. But you know, the first time I used this, I thought that it was less dense than the Bareminerals brush, but I don't think it is. Or like maybe it is technically like a little bit less dense, like in terms of like how much bristle is packed in at the bottom. Because like this is super dense down here. Like this is like there's only so much give this has. And this has like a little bit more give. Or actually, no, that's pretty firm. Never mind. Never mind. So I would actually say that like at the ferrule, they're both about the same density. This one might actually be a bit more dense. But as you get up here, this one just feels so much more like smooth and almost airy. But when you actually get it on your skin, it's like you're rubbing, this isn't going to do justice to how the brush works, but it's like you're rubbing a very fine piece of like carpet on your hand. Like that's how dense it is up here. But you don't really realize how dense it is because it's so soft. Like I feel like a lot of brushes have issue with being really dense because then they end up poking you. This doesn't do that. It's very soft. It's very, very, very soft, but the density doesn't make it any less soft. Which, if you've ever had a brush that was like really stiff and really dense and it just kind of like poked you, this is the total opposite of that. And honestly, I feel like I still use my Bareminerals brush sometimes, and when I go in between these two, I have to like remind myself how to use this brush, because whereas I have to put in a lot of pressure when I'm using this brush in order to get it to like buff in stuff, this brush truly does all the work for you. And it actually works better if you're not like putting a ridiculous amount of pressure on it. You really just have to go over your skin like very lightly. And I mean, even if you put some pressure on it, it still doesn't move your skin around at all. It's very, very gentle. But at the same time, it does an amazing buffing job because of how dense the bristle is. So if you're like me and you use Bareminerals, this like puts it on for you so nicely. Like it puts it on in a very nice, even layer. It gets it all buffed in. And it doesn't do anything weird. And if you've ever used well, actually, I don't know how Bareminerals works on other people's skin, but on my skin, it can be really finicky. It can like clump up. I can put on too much and then it looks weird. There's just all these kinds of things that it can do. And this brush works with it really, really, really well. I know a lot of people use this brush for finishing powder. I don't use it for finishing powder. I don't find that that typically works well for me. And I think that's just different application styles. I don't really get anything out of buffing in a finishing powder. I very much like to like just glide on my finishing powder with like a big fluffy brush like the Kyureido Kiwami. So it's a very different way of putting on a finishing powder. But it all depends on your preferences, the products that you're using, and your skin. So I don't use this for finishing powder, but I know a lot of people do. And honestly, if I could trade like all of these brushes for this brush, I mean, one, that would be a great deal because this is incredibly expensive and these are not. I would totally trade. And I've considered getting rid of these brushes and getting another one of Sonia G's, or the Buffer Pro now. It's just one of those things that you don't realize until you get a really nice brush, how different brushes can be. Because these two brushes, I kind of thought they would be the same. At the time when I first bought this, I was like, why am I paying $75 for a brush? And I'm sure when this retailed, it wasn't more than $20 anyway. Like, this was never an expensive brush. But they look very similar, like they're the same kind of brush. And I kind of thought that I was being duped by the hype and, being talked into buying more expensive brushes than I needed. But you know what? This is a great brush. And this really changed how easy it is for me to apply makeup. And it changed how much I enjoy applying makeup. By which I mean, I didn't enjoy applying makeup at all before. Using any of my synthetic brushes was not fun, and it was very tedious, and I messed up a lot of the time, and the brush did not help me. These brushes, I would actually kind of like them if they didn't shed every single time that I used them, but they're still nothing compared to this brush. This brush just combines everything. It has softness, it has density, it has, I don't know, it's just super intuitive to use. And it does what I need it to do perfectly. Perfectly. So this isn't a declutter video, but it's very likely that at some point I'm just going to get rid of these three. I don't know if I'm going to invest in another one of these right now, but I probably will at some time in the future. I have no intention of using any other flat top brush. If you think there are any out there that compete with this brush, let me know. I feel like I haven't seen any review that really compares this with anything else. This kind of stands alone. I'm really happy I have this brush. It's a beautiful brush. When I was looking at reviews of brushes, I noticed a lot of people really loved these like small round brushes. And I have since realized, after buying 3 of them, I don't like this kind of brush. It's too big to use for blush. It just makes this like round apple area that I don't like, and it kind of just makes my round face look more round, and it's like too big, and it's just, these don't work for my face shape. Not for blush, definitely not for highlighter. I've tried using them for Bareminerals, kind of like what I use this brush for, but brush performs so much better. So it's not really fair. I will probably get rid of these. I might hang on to the Sonia G one just because I know if I get rid of that, I will never be able to get one again. But at the same time, I'm not really using them. Like, yes, they have blush on them because I try to use them every once in a while, but I always go back to my fan brushes for blush. So, and then I have these 2 on the end. This one is another one from Bareminerals that's also like a very old natural hair brush. I don't really know why I still have this. It's a very airy brush, very pinched ferrule, but it sheds. It sheds every time I use it. It's not that useful. So I will probably get rid of this at some point. I kept it for a really long time because I didn't really have anything this airy that I could use as like a really airy like finishing powder brush, or even using for like a really light amount of blush or something, like just something to like very airily like dance on top of the skin. But frankly, I almost never use this. I don't like this kind of shape. And in general, I don't like these shapes that are like blunt on top, you know, like they have like this little bit of a curve, but they don't have any taper or point to them. I don't know what to do with these. It's like anything that I would use this for, I would vastly prefer to use my Goss 00, you know? Like if I want to do finishing powder, I would much rather this. If I'm going to do like blush and I don't want to use a fan brush and I kind of want to like diffuse it a lot, I would use this. Or I mean, actually, I would use my Beautylish Yano series. I think this is the 2. Yeah, the 2 brush. I for anything that I could use this for, I have at least one other brush that I would just wildly prefer over this one. So yeah, this is probably another one that I will get rid of. It's not my kind of brush. It's not a particularly high quality brush. It's something that I'm going to get rid of. And then this one from Bobbi Brown. So this was a freebie that I got on her website when I was getting my color corrector. I wish I had nicer things to say about this brush because I think it actually is high quality. But again, it's a very small but rounded face brush. Like it's synthetic, by the way. It's not natural hair, but it's kind of this shape. So it's one of those things where like it's a good shape. I can tell like how people use this and why they like it, but it just doesn't work for my face shape. I do think that if I had some cream products, I would probably keep this around, but literally my only cream product is the color corrector from Bobbi Brown, and this is way, 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 way too big to go underneath my eyes. So this is another one that I will probably declutter, but I don't have anything bad to say about this. I was actually very surprised for like a free brush how nice this feels, you know? Like, oh, this is the full coverage face. I didn't even realize that it had a name back there. But yeah, not a bad brush, but nothing that's useful for me. All right, so I feel like I just blathered on about a bunch of brushes that I didn't like, plus the face one. Down here are some really good brushes that I really love. So let's start off with my Goss 02 brush. So this is the original. That's made of, I think it's squirrel hair and goat hair, but I'm not entirely sure. I could never find like a straight answer. But this is very soft. Very, very soft. It's a really beautiful brush. This is one of those brushes that I could probably get rid of if I wanted to, because I don't have a great use for it. But I do like to have it every once in a while for blush or highlight when I want the specific shape. I do find that I prefer a fan brush. Having this kind of a rounded brush around is nice. And frankly, I just like putting this on my face because it's really soft. But I will say, I wish it had more of a taper to it. I would like this more if it were more tapered. And if it was more tapered, I could probably take it underneath my eye, and that would be more versatile for me. It would make it more versatile of a brush. But as it is, it kind of drags along under my lower lash line a little bit if I try to go underneath my eyes. And that's just how my face is shaped. I need something that's pretty tapered for that. Now this is the Goss Airbrush. This is one of those brushes that I really, really hope that Wayne brings back at some point. I don't know if there's availability of the bristle that would be needed to make this kind of a brush, but this is a beautiful brush. I love everything about this, and honestly, I find myself not using it very often because I'm afraid of using it up, so to speak, because this is another brush where if I were to damage this brush, or if it were to be washed so many times that it would get scratchy, I wouldn't be able to replace this. I don't think there really is a replacement out there. I have seen something from the Beautylish Yano series that looks a lot like this, but I don't think I've seen anything side by side for those two. But this is a beautiful brush. I do like using this for highlight. I could use this underneath my eyes. This does go underneath my lash line really, really nicely. And because of that, I keep on thinking about picking up the Sonia G Designer Pro because I think it has a similar shape to this. It's a different bristle. It's goat hair rather than squirrel hair, but underneath my eyes, I would be using that for setting my concealer, so I'd want goat hair anyway. But this is a beautiful brush. Really, I just use this for highlight, but it's one of those brushes that I just like to feel it gliding on my face. It just feels very nice. Now, this next one took me forever to pick up because this was very expensive. I forget exactly how much this was, and I don't want to look back at how much I spent on this. I really wanted a brush that could diffusely put blush on my face, and I got this before I got my fan brushes, and to be honest, I think if I had my fan brushes, I wouldn't have purchased this. I wouldn't have needed this, and I don't really need this, but I'm really happy I have it because this is one of those brushes that are just a luxury to use, and that actually goes for both this one and my Kyureido Kiwami. These two brushes I don't need to have in my collection. They're not the most functional brushes, if that makes sense. But I keep them because I like how they feel on my face. And I like how they give a really diffused look to some products. Now, I could achieve that look with other brushes that I have, but I like the luxurious feel of these. So I'll use this mostly for my hourglass powder. I think this one is in Mood Light. I'll just take this and put it on the tops of my cheekbones, and it just provides a very diffused look. And I kind of actually need that for this particular hourglass powder. This powder, if I put this on too thickly, it looks weird. It gives very strong glazed donut vibes. And I don't usually want that, but I like what this gives when it's very diffused. And if I'm using a goat hair brush, sometimes it's a little too easy to go full glazed donut, and I don't always want that. And then we have my Kyureido Kiwami. I think it's KW001 is the number that goes with this brush, but I kind of forget. And I remember picking up this brush. I was really afraid that I wouldn't like the sparkles in the handle because I'm generally very matchy with my brushes. I do have a number of brushes here that don't match, but they're all brushes that I'm going to get rid of. Everything that I've purchased after this brush has been to match my Sonia G brushes. And it's actually one of the reasons I don't love my Rephr brushes maybe as much as they deserve because they have this matte ferrule and handle. And yeah, they're still black, but I feel like this kind of clashes with the shiny black. You can see how it looks pretty different from the Wayne Goss shiny black ferrule and handle. I mean, also just the handle looks cheaper. You can see how the other handles have this taper to them. They fit better in the hand, whereas the rougher ones, they're just kind of I don't know, they have like a stiffness to them. They don't round out. They're not like as ergonomic to use, which I kind of thought that these would be like, but they're not. I actually really like the chubby handles from Sonia G's old brushes because they, or at least for me, they encourage me to hold them more like this, like away from the brush. So I'm not putting as much force on it, which is something I feel like I'm still teaching myself. So this is actually really ergonomic. It's just a bit different from how I hold like something that's more this shape. I really like the chubby handles. They're different for sure. And I understand how some people don't like them and don't consider them ergonomic. But the Rephr ones are just too straight. There's no curve to them where they sit in the hand nicely. But I mean, that's kind of where I'm sure that's like one of the areas where they cost cut. You know, it makes sense to me. But take away from this whole like distraction is I don't like that these don't match. Anyway, I was afraid that I wasn't going to like the sparkles in this. I was afraid it was going to be kind of obvious and look bad, and it really doesn't. Like, if you're not really all up on this, looking at the handle, you don't even really notice that there's sparkles in there. I guess you can see from a distance that there's sparkles, but they don't super catch your eye, you know, like it's subtle. They're subtle. So I think that it still matches all of my brushes nicely. So this, like I said, this is one of those brushes that maybe not the most functional, and I don't use it that often because I have really oily skin, but putting this on my face is just such a dream. It's probably my nicest feeling brush. It's so soft, and it has this shape that I really like. Now, this particular brush is bundled weird, and I don't know if that's just how this brush is, but you see how it's like lopsided kind of? Like this side has longer bristles on the bottom than on this side. And I don't think it's not a case of it drying weird because I've washed this a couple times now. But I don't really notice it when I'm using it. And I find that because of the shape, it actually has a similar feel on my face, not in terms of softness or anything, but in terms of shape, to the Goss 00, which is my favorite brush. I love this brush. I love its shape. And I'm really happy I could find a squirrel hair brush that kind of mimics the shape. Like, I know the squirrel hair brush looks like wider, more chunky, but you see how it comes to like a tape, like a bit of a tip. It's very rounded off by comparison, but on the face, it really can go into like the corners of my face really nicely, the way that this brush can. And I just really love that because I really like the shape and I love how soft this is. It's really just a treat to use. But before we get to the Goss 00, I actually purchased Sonia G's Inochige Pro first because I thought that this was going to be like the all-over powder brush that I wanted. And it's a really nice brush. I have nothing bad to say about it in terms of quality, in terms of build, ergonomics, anything, but I got this as an all-over face powder brush. But it doesn't come to as much of a taper as I really need in order to get into all of the, little crevices of my face, which is what I want in a powder brush. I want to be able to put a even layer of setting or finishing powder all over my face. And this is just a little bit too blunt. I needed something with a bit more of a taper. Because this, while I can use this underneath my eyes, it's so easy for me to poke myself in the eye. Because the tip of this is just chonky enough that it drags along my lower lash line. And I don't love that. So it's a really nice brush, and this was so close to what I wanted. And the quality is just absolutely impeccable. But I wanted something with more of a taper, and honestly, something that was bigger. So for a really long time, I was just like, oh, well, that brush doesn't exist. And I kept on hearing about the Wayne Goss and like old review, the Wayne Goss 00 and old reviews. And the few reviews that I could find where people like compared these two next to one another, people would say like, oh, they're the, let me put these together so you can actually see them clearly side by side. People would say that they're basically the same size. Maybe the Wayne Goss is a little bit bigger, and otherwise they're like the same shape. And I disagree. The Wayne Goss is so much more tapered than the Sonia G. Sonia G it's rounded off to like a beautiful, beautiful point. Like it looks so nice, you know, but it's not tapered enough for my uses. And the Wayne Goss is actually a lot bigger of a brush. Like it's just a bigger brush all around. And it's a bit longer as well, which is interesting because if I remember correctly, like the bristle length on Beautylish, I think was listed as the same for both of these brushes. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I remember doing a lot of research, and all of the research that I could find came back with, you know, they're basically the same brush, except the Sonia G Inochige Pro is so much softer. But I ended up just buying the brush. I found it on a secondhand site, and I decided, you know what, I really want to know if this is the brush that I wanted the Inochige Pro to be. And I'm so happy I purchased it because this is my favorite brush. Out of all my brushes, this is what I use the most often. And I am so, so, so happy that I was able to purchase this. Now, I will say, in terms of quality, this is not as high of a quality of bristle as the Inochige Pro. Sonia G's brushes are just always a cut above. That's been my experience with everything, and that's particularly true between the Inochige Pro and the Wayne Goss 00. The Wayne Goss 00 is a good brush, and I very much prefer the shape and the size of it, but this brush does poke me. This is not a super soft brush. And at first I thought it was just because I got the second hand and I wasn't sure, like maybe this wasn't taken care of properly. But I do remember seeing in a lot of older reviews from people who bought this new, that it was scratchy, and particularly the black dyed one was scratchy. So, you know, that's kind of unfortunate, but it's still my favorite brush. It's still my favorite brush because the shape makes it so good. I really, really, I really hope that Wayne Goss comes out with an updated 00. I would love something that's like the same size and shape with this beautiful taper, but with like a softer bristle. I mean, really, if I could get the Wayne Goss 00 size and shape, but with the Sonia G Inochige Pro materials and build, that would be my favorite brush ever. I would love that. All right, so we're down to the fan brushes. So where do I want to go with these? The reason I got all four of these is because I was having trouble applying blush the way that I wanted to with my other brushes. And I kept on seeing people recommend getting fan brushes for blush. And I was like, that's crazy. Why would you use a fan brush for blush? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I think it was this one. I think it was the Fan Pro came up on a secondhand site. Someone had never used it. It was brand new, and they were selling it for like, I don't know, it was like $10 or something. And I was like, you know what? I can try it for $10. So I bought this and I played around with it, and I was really surprised at not just how precise this could be with blush, but how well it could blend it out. Like how you can like give a nice sweep of color or come in and like create, you know, whatever gradient you want. It was just such a different experience from something like a round brush, you know? It just gives you a whole different level of not just precision, but it gives you a lot more freedom on what shapes you can work with. And I really appreciated that, and I really liked that. And honestly, I could probably have just stuck with this brush, but I was really curious what Sonia G's other fan brushes were. So I was able to pick these up. These were all secondhand, but I believe they were new, and they feel new. They don't feel like they've ever been touched. And I really don't think that I needed all 4 of these, and I will probably declutter some, maybe. I don't know. I really like them though. So I don't mind having a variety, but I don't need all of them. Like if I could go back in time and not buy all 4 of them, I would probably do that. But so I do find that Fan Pro and Sculpt 3 are like the same brush, which usually I feel like I can feel a difference between undyed goat hair and dyed goat hair. I always think that dyed goat hair feels softer to me. I don't really know if I feel that with these two. I think the only difference is I think that the Fan Pro is like a little bit thicker in terms of bristle, and I think the undyed goat hair have a little bit more strength to the bristle, whereas the undyed goat hair are a little bit less rigid. But they all have, they both have like a very similar flow to them. They really do. So I don't know. To me, these are the same brush. Yeah, the difference between them is very little. I don't think that you need both of them unless you want 2 of the same brush, Like if you're someone who will go and get, 2 of either one of these, having both of these is kind of nice. So I do think that my favorite of all the fan brushes, though, is the Sculpt 2. And I like this because even though it's a much larger brush, like, see these next to each other, it is a much larger brush than the Sculpt 3 or the Fan Pro. It's just bigger all around. Like, look how much thicker it is. Look how much bigger. It just has so much more bristle to it. But despite that, you can get the same amount of precision out of it, or at least I can for when I'm working with blush. And I really love that. I love that I can work with this really big brush and get a lot of precision. And then also I can blend in blush really, really well with this because it's a thicker brush. And even though, I don't know, it almost feels softer than the other two. I don't think it's softer necessarily. I think it just feels more plush because of all of this, all this bristle and the sort of like nice density it has. It just gives you a lot more control because you can get pretty precise. Like it has almost, like it comes to, not a taper, but it's not super rounded off, Like you have a good amount of, you just can get a lot of precision with this brush, but you also have the power of all those bristles to really blend things in if you want. And it just feels so nice. Now, that all being said, I still don't know what to do with Sculpt 4. The reason this brush looks clean is because it is clean, and I don't know if I've ever actually used it. Maybe I've used it with highlight. And it still has like some adhesive on it. I need to take that off. But this brush is just, it's like I always think of it as stiffer, and then I put it on my hand, and it has this beautiful glide to it. But it is very dense. Like it is plush, but it doesn't have the give that the Sculpt 2 does. It's like this it's very soft, very giving. There's a lot of give to this. It can squish down for you. This one, it has a lot of density, but like not nearly as much squish, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know what to do with this as someone who uses a lot of powder products. This strikes me as something that would work really well for a cream product. I think the density would help you with a cream product, and I think the additional stiffness would help you with a cream product as well. So I just don't know quite what to do with this. It's a lovely brush, but I still need to work with it. I still need to figure out what to do. All right, so this was a really long video, but I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that this was helpful. I do plan on going through and doing individual reviews of most, if not all, of these brushes. So if there's anything that you want a specific review on, let me know. I'm happy to do that and put that up, because otherwise I don't know what order I'm going to go in. But if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.